Tap, tap. Is this thing on? I suppose it is. So thank you for that lovely introduction, Rachel. And yeah, we did just get a really big donation in from Anthropic. It is unearmarked, which is amazing, and matches what we were going to take from the NSF. So thanks for them for doing that. Very exciting times. That said, I am still going to talk about funding Python's future because any graph that you would look at, and I didn't bring slides, but you can find these anywhere on the internet. Usage for Python has done like this. So we basically, anything that comes in, we can spend almost immediately on continuing to provide Python, making sure that we are taking care of the legal infrastructure, that like the trademarks and things like that, and then also providing for the massive global Python community. So I want to talk a little bit about like Python as the Software Foundation as a nonprofit. So my background, I've been doing nonprofit work for a long, long time, like basically since I was a teenager, which is a really long time ago now. But we used to always think about funding for nonprofits in a really specific way. We would talk about this like sort of pyramid, and you would have like a base of small, dependable donations at the bottom from individual contributors, and then you would have this middle of like corporate sponsors, like folks that always sponsor your events or sponsor your different activities and things like that. And then at the top would be like kind of like a bonus of less dependable, like intermittent monies that come as large gifts from like maybe unreliable sources, where you're like, that's great, who knows if that'll ever happen again, but we will take it and use it and kind of plow it back into our fields to go further with our farm metaphors here. And this is how traditional nonprofits have always tried to function. And so for us, like, looking at that pyramid, like we do individual memberships. We do like we sell t-shirts, we have an event, we sell tickets to that event, things like that. And so that's great. But like the tech nonprofit picture is really different. Like it's almost all middle, where it's like recurring donations from corporations that use your software. And that is like sort of our bread and butter. So it's definitely not a pyramid. Maybe it's like a water wheel or a churn, or like if you're growing, maybe it looks like Katamari Damacy, where you're just collecting stocks and bureaus and piles of cash all the time, which would be great. And so, this is like a really different kind of fundraising. So like, instead of long-term plans, it requires you to be constantly aware of who is using your software, who your stakeholders are, and to be constantly pivoting and adjusting and meeting those needs. Now for Python, that's great because like I said, the growth has gone up. Python is the language of choice for AI. Like we've been good for math and data for a really, really long time. There's a lot of libraries, a ton of robust support. And that has only grown as people are finding new and different ways to use AI. Some great, some the other thing, but they're still using Python. But the churn is a lot of work. And then like, just to kind of, we haven't said, this is about 2026, right? So just to say like, the last year's been a really weird one. Well, for a lot of reasons, but for nonprofits in specific. Domestically, like here in the US where we're based, there's been a lot of layoffs and a lot of inflation that affects individual giving. And then internationally, cuts to organizations like USAID have impacted large traditional grant-making organizations. Those funders have seen a massive influx of new requests. So like things that were being taken care of are back on the needs help pile. So like all of the sort of funding sources for traditional like humanitarian nonprofits have like kind of just gotten, think of someone trying to pour a gallon of milk into a teacup with requests. So that has sort of changed the traditional nonprofit landscape. And that's relevant to us because we do some outreach, and we've been thinking about like, oh, maybe we could more specifically do outreach for funding on our grants program, our educational work, and our humanitarian stuff. Not at this moment. The specific picture for tech nonprofits, so that's kind of like more generally speaking, like people kind of have less money and the money that's out there has more people looking for it. But specifically speaking about like tech nonprofits, the layoffs and inflations have affected us over here as well. There's been this massive push to automate. I think that might be counterbalancing. I'm like kind of thinking 2026 might be the year where they realize that some of the things cannot actually be replaced with AI. Like you can't just tell AI like, hey, can you do Sarah's job? You have to have someone who actually understands what Sarah's job is to feed stuff into those prompts, and actually who's better than Sarah for that. But, so maybe that massive like kind of downturn and layoff situation is starting to change. I do think also too, like we lost a lot of like kind of our superstar open source contributors lost their jobs and their influence within the companies. And I think this is it kind of degrades the relationship between companies and the folks, they're upstream. So someone might look on paper the same as any other person like contributing and writing Python code at your workplace, but what's maybe not captured in their like kind of KPIs is the person who has a really good, solid relationship with the upstream community, who understands the priorities, the things that are going on, the conversations that are happening, the changes that are coming to the language. And so, like a person who is willing to participate in project governance, like should be last on your layoff list. If in case anyone wants my 2 cents on it. But I would also say that those people are often willing to mentor newcomers and things like that, and that's an employee you want. But it also makes it like a lot of our relationships with that middle or that water wheel or that collection of socks and dressers depends on an individual relationship. So we spend a lot of time maintaining those relationships and making sure that they're solid. But that still is not enough to, to cover exponential growth of the Python community. So I want to, I know there is more funding for some stuff. Like Ruth talked a lot about how like we finally all know that security is a thing that you want to fund. And I think almost everybody understands that security is not like, oh, maybe your really smart nephew could just like kind of do it. And it's like, no, it has to be a specific person that really understands like how security works, because it's important to get right. And it takes a certain amount of expertise, which means it takes a certain amount of money. As Patrick was talking about, we have to pay people for their work, and doing something that you can get, I don't know, like a 300K plus salary a year for, as a volunteer, loses its luster pretty fast. So I think those are things that we do need to pay for, and people are excited to pay for security. We just have to make sure that the expectation of how far that goes, like it can't be a hat that we pass and people throw coins in. So that said, we've also noticed that companies want a little bit more than code over the wall. So like the companies and corporate entities that do get it, they want to know. They're like, oh, what's on the roadmap? What are the new features? What's going to change in the next iteration of Python? And we really encourage that, because I think that gives us kind of the best, most sustainable partners, like people who kind of understand the big picture and like what is coming down the pike. So that does create some opportunities as well, like companies that want more from the ecosystem than just like, okay, you send a newsletter. It's a great newsletter, but what else? Or like, yes, we attend the event. Like, it's a great event. Awesome. What else? So we've been thinking a lot about what else. And some of that creates some opportunities for funding. And some of this will be a little bit overlap with what Patrick talked about. And some of it's a little different. Our use case is slightly different than Apereo's. So historically, the PSF has relied primarily on funding from corporate users of Python, just as a, like, we like you. They're not like, we're not selling anything to them. It's usually a completely unearmarked situation. And I suspect this is true at most other programming languages and similar open source tech stacks. Like, people are like, well, I have a vague sense of responsibility based on my perceived usage and my perceived size in your ecosystem. And we write a check. And somehow those all get rounded down, it feels like. But I mean, not all, but many. um, and then, like many other groups, we also host an event that used to be a significant source of revenue. The margin on events has been shrinking. I think they're still worth doing because the learning and the networking and the time to work together is still really important. But the heyday of events where there was like hot breakfast for the 11 people that woke up on Sunday morning to witness it is probably going by the wayside. They're going to start to feel a little bit more, you know, maybe like something more casual that you would go to in your own community, as opposed to like so many blinking lights and free champagne. Not that we ever had free champagne at PyCon, but so the events have gotten more expensive, and the international attendance has gone down for PyCon US, which is the one that we run. And people's appetite for a very expensive conference ticket has not kept pace with inflation. So we're looking on ways to change the revenue and cost, but we're also looking at ways to add different revenue streams to our picture. So I know Patrick did talk about services, and we've been looking at that too. So a little over a year ago, we rolled out PyPI organizations. So organization account features are the first step to like kind of providing companies sort of a workspace within their usage of the package index on the Python servers. And so they can have like kind of a little bit of branding so that you can see that a package is part of a group. At an operational level, it makes it easier for companies that use PyPI a lot to be able to set permissions on who can add stuff, who can edit stuff, who can be part of the group. Or somebody leaves, and then instead of trying to figure out which of your 87 packages they were involved on or had permissions on, you remove them from the group, or you add them to the group when you hire new people. And, you know, we do this for like corporate users of PyPI, but it's free for academic and nonprofit and individual users to access those same kinds of features. We've also been looking into like, is there security work that we can do, like attestations, or just like raw, like adding additional storage or bandwidth for different users of the package index. Because right now, like our bandwidth is like, woo, so we cap everyone's usage of like and size of package that they can put on there. But there is desire for that. So we've been looking at how to make that a service thing that people pay us for, so that the usage of Python and PyPI is tied to the revenue that we receive, which it isn't now. It has like the loosest relationship ever. It's like your pen pal from 4th grade whose last name you don't remember. So we're trying to get those two things in sync. I would think some other things that we're looking at, if there's information that we could provide, or like allowing people to kind of do better analysis of the traffic and usage of their packages, maybe. But all of these things are sort of tied to the usage of Python and PyPI, so that people can support it in a way that really is like commensurate with the usage and the work that it causes for the foundation. Another thing that we are looking at is, I mentioned that we have a grants program, and we support events and communities all over the world that are using Python, especially like entities in communities where people are teaching Python to each other. It's actually one of my favorite things about our community, is meeting like the dozens and dozens of people all over the world that are like, as soon as I learned Python, I decided I would try and find other people to teach it to, which is like amazing and inspiring, and something that we have yet to find like a dedicated funding source for. So that's something we're still looking for. It's a little rough, as I mentioned. Traditional grants are kind of overwhelmed with requests for core support. So, like, if you're going into like different communities where like food or water or housing or medical supplies are funded by outside aid, they're not really, if they have to meet those needs before they can even consider talking about educational opportunities. So it's hard for us to find like an entity that specifically is like teaching people Python. That's my favorite. I want to write you a big check. So I want to, I'm like, I guess I'm manifesting that for 2026. If you heard that and you were like, I love teaching people Python, I love other people teaching people Python, and I can write a big check, please email me. But we're continuing to look at grants and other things like that. And we're also open to collaboration with other nonprofits for this work. So we don't have to do it alone. There's a lot of different other organizations doing other work. It has been a weird year. I feel like maybe 2026 is the year where we, just get over it and meet the new reality. I mean, for our work here, do whatever else you want to do in your own time. But yeah, so the pyramid for funding is a pipe dream. So I guess we welcome the water wheel or the massive rubber ball band that we just keep putting new stuff on. Yeah, so we're pursuing different avenues for funding. And I think it's really important, Ruth touched on this a little bit, that we continue to talk to each other about like how we leverage different opportunities, look at new ways to think about funding, and maybe work on some of those opportunities together. So, yeah. So, you want to collaborate on seeking funding with the PSF, let me know. Otherwise, I'll take any questions that pop up in the chat and give the conch back to Rachel.